next to impossible to get a doctor to deliver a baby, and the girl is 9 months. Because if she delivers before, so we're looking at pathology expenses, and we can't do it. But some girls are ineligible, and they don't, they don't fit any of the requirements for Medicaid. So then we're stuck with the problem of finding an OBGYN that will accept, a small payment. But, like I was saying before, that's a 2-day exercise to find an OBGYN who's going to accept one of our clients who does not have Medicaid or who does not have any type of set way to pay them. So many times the girls do deliver in the emergency room of the day, and that is an option now. But when that is taken from us, then I don't know what we're going to do.
Cummings has one client who has no money, no insurance, and a due date very near the February 1st deadline for emergency room deliveries.
Just to be honest with you, if this girl does not deliver before this February 1 deadline, then I don't know what I'm going to do because it is very difficult to find a physician who would take a girl at that point in her pregnancy and deliver the baby. So I really don't know what I'm going to tell her. I do know that I can't make that baby come any sooner than when it is ready.
Cummings says sometimes her job can be frightening.
I did have a girl to call in very early in the morning, and I took her to the emergency room of the day because I knew all the time that I would have to do that. And she's in labor in the passenger side of my car, and I'm panicking, and the hospital staff is saying, well, who's going to pay for it, Well, that was the last thing on my mind, but this girl didn't have any insurance, and what they were basically saying is, come up with some insurance, and they held her downstairs until the agency signed for full responsibility of the bill. Hi, Paul. This is Brenda. I hadn't had any luck.
Not less than 10% under the legislation must be awarded to disadvantaged businesses, which are people in those ethnic categories, and the state has established a 10% goal for disadvantaged businesses and a 1% goal for women-owned businesses.
Does the state usually meet its quota?
This past year it has, and it's striving in the current fiscal year, which began October 1, to exceed the participation that they achieved last year.
Wilson will be the 11th chief of police in the history of the city. He's 32 and began his law enforcement career 10 years ago. The mayor's announcement capped off weeks of speculation about who would be named to the post. Wilson said it's a high point in his career, but there's work to do.
I kind of have some mixed emotions. It's not a time to, like, you have a climax for your career. I'm proud of my appointment, but it's not a time to say that you've reached a high point in your career. It's time to start all over again.
Mayor Farmer says he doesn't anticipate any problems getting confirmation for his 3 choices when he presents the names to the City Council at next week's meeting. Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, City Hall.
Governor Wallace's State of the State address covers quite a bit of territory, but it doesn't get into too many specifics. Wallace does mention the serious financial problem faced by the state, but he doesn't specifically mention where cuts will have to be made to make the general fund and education budgets balanced during the upcoming year. He does, however, take the position that there will be no room for state employee or teacher pay raises in the upcoming year. Wallace also takes the position that lawmakers will have to be extremely cautious during this session and not let the election year habit of spending money freely take them over.
House come to order.
It was with the bang of the gavel that some modern history was recorded, the first time the legislature has met outside the historic Capitol in recent memory. And as expected, there were some bugs.
I'm informed by the clerk that they're now working on the sound system, so if you can't hear, we're sorry, but hopefully it'll be fixed in the next few minutes.
Still, the legislative process got underway with lawmakers introducing what will eventually number thousands of bills. The biggest obstacle for House and Senate leaders will be trying to force some middle ground between the serious financial problems faced by the state and the election year habit of freely spending state dollars.
Well, it might be difficult for some people, but I'm just not going to let it be for me. I'm going to do what's right to run a smooth session.
If it was not an election year, then the legislature may be more responsive to looking for additional revenue. The fact it is election year, I don't think that issue will come up.
Wallace also takes great lengths to criticize the previous James administration, saying he inherited a ship of state on a respirator and drifting without knowledgeable direction. The only other major issues Wallace addresses in his State of the State message is endorsement of increases in the unemployment compensation benefit, increases in the penalties for drug traffickers, an abortion notification measure, and an imposition of the controversial cap on malpractice lawsuits. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Alabama State House.
House come to order.
It was with the bang of the gavel that some modern history was recorded, the first time the legislature has met outside the historic Capitol in recent memory. And as expected, there were some bugs.
I'm informed by the clerk that they're now working on the sound system, so if you can't hear, we're sorry, but hopefully it'll be fixed in the next few minutes.
Still, the legislative process got underway with lawmakers introducing what will eventually number thousands of bills. The biggest obstacle for House and Senate leaders will be trying to force some middle ground between the serious financial problems faced by the state and the election year habit of freely spending state dollars.
Well, it might be difficult for some people, but I'm just not going to let it be for me. I'm going to do what's right to run a smooth session.
If it was not an election year, then the legislature may be more responsive to looking for additional revenue. The fact it is election year, I don't think that issue will come up.
School administrators wanted the candidates to answer two questions. Will career ladder be funded by the legislature in 1986? And how should state monies be divided among elementary, secondary, and four-year schools? Each candidate said career ladder is not fully developed, and each agreed the legislature will probably withhold funding this year, waiting for a teacher evaluation process to be completed. But on the question of school funding, Lieutenant Governor Bill Baxley says there should not be one set formula for dividing school money.
But the needs do change. I can foresee possibilities. Well, we would need a special bond issue, 100% for K through 12.
Attorney General Charles Graddick believes the priority of funding should remain at the elementary level.
By cutting out waste. Say that we need to get back to basics and start stressing reading, writing, and arithmetic. Goodness knows we need to do that.
Former Lieutenant Governor George McMillan told the audience financing public education with one set formula won't work.
That I do not feel that you can develop some magical formula that could stick from year to year, such as 2/3 of the money going to elementary and secondary and 1/3 going to higher education, because I think it's unrealistic.
And Talladega Mayor Larry Barton says emphasis should be in K through 6 because without those basics, high school and college mean nothing. Association officials say the forum is not an attempt at endorsing a candidate for governor or lieutenant governor, but rather an opportunity to hear positions on public education. Shed Johnson, WSFA TV News.
Up in numbers and accounts and so on. We're going to the authorization legislation with which Congressman Dickinson had everything is covered by the Graham-Rudman concerns, and so we'll be looking at everything. But that is such an investment in terms of personnel, in terms of the benefit that is drawn by the Air Force and by the citizenry of this country, that it's high on a priority list. So the Department of Defense and to other folks, but quite frankly didn't know the nature of the audience when I came here. And
thank you, Parker. Ladies and gentlemen, I've received a lot of honors in my time, but I think being selected your chamber president.
The authorization legislation, which Congressman Dickinson,
He just got his job.
We want to keep those good people. We want to get even more good people as we go through the cycle. And having made the investment that we do in the enlisted and officer ranks, to witness a turnover would be tragic. That will be made and that can be made. But many of these things is flag. I would pick up at least an amber flag and caution each of you in this room.
Thank you, Parker. Ladies and gentlemen, I've received a lot of honors in my time, but I think being selected your chamber president has to rank as number one. I love this city, and I don't think there's a person in.
So, they got it in almost on time.
His own time for him.
Almost on time. He wants to send on a slip. Assistant District Attorneys Association.
I don't think so. Okay. Okay. Do I hear a motion? So moved. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Next is approved charitable request, Sheriff's Department. What is it?
We got three, the sheriff.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Well, since it's your idea, John, how about you serving? Bill, I call on you so much, but would you consider serving?
Well, I reckon so. I ain't very happy, but I know John isn't either.
Well, I know it's something we need to get done.
Differences, freedom is our common agreement. The promise of freedom led millions to flee the sorrows and disasters of the old world.
The resolution calling for the city of Selma to officially honor the birth date of the late civil rights leader was sponsored by Councilman Lorenzo Harrison and approved on a final vote of 4-2, despite opposition from Selma Mayor Joe Smitherman and Council President Carl Morgan Jr. and Councilman Kimbrough Ballard. Their arguments not to set aside King's birthday as an official city holiday would set a precedent never before followed in Selma city history. But the resolution sponsor felt King's holiday meant much more.
So I say to you today that Dr. King was to America what Jesus was to a sinner, and that was a savior.
Supporters like Councilman Charlie Morris feel the resolution is symbolic to thousands of black Americans around the country because it was Selma that propelled the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. into the international spotlight. The approval of this resolution by the Selma City Council was, as one Selma councilman termed it, a message to the country. Shed Johnson, WSFA TV News, Selma City Hall.
Our ultimate dream is that one day there will be so many people and believers of the dream of Dr. King that no longer will we have to run from Selma to Atlanta, but that people will be able to stand side by side and that baton will pass from Selma through Montgomery, through Birmingham, on to Atlanta.
Things are on the mind of the Auburn Tigers as they prepare to return to Tuscaloosa. One, they'll be playing in one of the most hostile environments they'll see all year. And number two, they need to make the most of opportunities, which they did not do last year. Twice, at the end of regulation and in the first overtime, Auburn had the last shot to win. But both times, Alabama denied Chuck Person the ball, and Auburn was forced to take poor shots. Alabama won in the second overtime at the free throw line.
We couldn't see the clock and it caused us to take 2 or 3 bad shots when we had the last shot in each of the first overtime and the second overtime. But for us to go in and come out with a victory, I believe we have to stop Buck Johnson and cut off the penetration of Terry O'Connor.
They play so well there. They have such a hostile crowd, and they have a great basketball atmosphere, especially for the Auburn game. That's one thing. And the other thing, they're an extremely talented team. I think one of the top 3 talented teams in our league, and they're well coached. You can't shut down one player and stop them, but they got a good support group for Buck Johnson. They all can score. Every player knows his role, and they play very good defense.
And there's the intimidation factor. Memorial Coliseum will be packed to the rafters, and they'll all be wearing red and white.
Yeah, I like that because, it makes you play a little bit harder, it makes you go after a lot of things you wouldn't normally go after, just fires you up. Buck, because Buck is a great offensive player. He shoots the ball real well, turning back to his right. And if we can control him, we can win the ball game. You can look at Buck Johnson and Derek McKeon and say they don't really have that much strength with the height that they have, but they're deceivingly strong.
You can't shut down one player and stop them. They got a good support group for Buck Johnson. They all can score. Every player knows his role, and they play very good defense. They do the things that good teams have to do to win. I think they do them very well.
There'll be a lot of changes. We're going to streamline the department and make it easier for the public to have access to the leaders in the department as well as the men, and try to get the best service we can.
At 32, you are supposedly the youngest police chief ever selected to serve the city of Montgomery. That's got to be quite an honor.
It's quite an honor, but as I told you earlier, I haven't been keeping up with age.
Who then will assume your old duties as department spokesman?
We'll break the department down into basically 2 branches. We'll have a chief of staff and a chief of operations, and the press duties as well as budget and purchasing and all the logistical things that come with running a police department will fall under Major Ed Alford.
Children, parents, citizens will contribute another $260,000 in nickels, dimes, and dollars. Symbol of the dream, America and liberty. The sorrows and disasters of the old world. They left their friends, home, family, almost everything they owned to seek a better life.
In his first speech in the Alabama State House, Governor Wallace offered some of the harshest criticism ever of the Fob James administration.
When we first gathered at 83, when we first gathered 3 years ago, it could be said that our state, physically speaking, was on a respirator. It was intensive care because it had been mismanaged.
Wallace says his administration has since improved the budgetary situation, despite the fact that both the general fund and education fund face serious cuts in the upcoming year.
I kind of urge you too strongly to take the statesman-like approach and develop the 86-87 budget, because we cannot come into proration. Resist the temptation and appropriate more than is available.
Wallace's prepared text said there would be no room for a state employee pay raise this year, but his ad-lib comments offered hope for a possible 4% pay increase should offshore oil bonuses this spring be plentiful. The only other major controversial issue Wallace touched on is the proposed cap on malpractice lawsuits and the increased penalties for drug traffickers. This is Wallace's first public appearance since being released from a Birmingham hospital for treatment of a urinary tract infection. His delivery was at times hard to follow.
And I'm talking about lawyers, and I'm not talking about, and I want to say and heard along here, all of us agree that
he was stumbling over his words. Probably the worst that I've heard him. He's stumbled before, but it was very difficult difficult to understand what he was saying.
Well, maybe so, maybe so. I was worried about that because we were going to have a no television. Then when it turned to television, of course, it was too late to get the speech cut out.
How do you feel physically? Do you feel well coming out of the hospital?
Physically, yeah.
Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Alabama State House. You rolling? Okay.
Joe Doomers here does the twist on the break with this amazing 360-degree spin. Atlanta's Doc Rivers makes this steal and goes behind the back to set up another dunk for Dominique Wilkins' human highlight film. And down in San Antonio, the Spurs guards steal and deal against Dallas. Johnny Moore slices through the Mavericks defense and makes a beautiful turnaround pass to the opportunistic Alvin Robertson. And talking about passing, nobody does it better on the break than the Los Angeles Lakers as Magic Johnson and James Worthy exchange slick-away passes and make things easy for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. At the other end of the court, Nick rookie Gerald Wilkins goes sky high to deny Indiana's Terrence Stansberry's dunk attempts. A modern David and Goliath is staged when 6'8" Xavier McDaniel is stuffed by 5'7" Spud Webb. Tony Campbell fires a perfect line drive shot from the opposing foul line that barely clears the rim. The Lakers' Maurice Lucas shoots from the same spot, but with a slightly different style. Lucas launches a two-headed rainbow that makes the Utah Jazz turn just as many colors. Watch this one go through the net. But the shot of the month, believe it or not, belongs to Dallas and Sam Perkins, who will connect from a near impossible position. And if you want to see it again, here it is from another angle. Jack Gregory, NBC News, Los Angeles.
At the time the constitutional amendment was being debated in the legislature, in the general fund budget preparation, and as you look at, I forgot also, excuse me, because of the legislation in recent years, which
$16.2 million balance at the end of this fiscal year.
I think it will be something that they'll just have to make a judgment about in the legislative process. That was one area that has just...
I'm not going to talk real long. I know y'all was wondering how long I'm going to talk. When Martin Luther King was here, we had a problem checking into the Holiday Inn and the Ramada Inn. We can get in all right now, but we have a problem in checking out, having the money to get out of it. We can get in them easy. He wants you to carry on the dream by being a good student, staying in school, not missing class, and making A's or at least a B. very distinct.
Alvin Holmes says Alabama needs to move now to get a state lottery. If one isn't created soon, Holmes says another neighboring state may start one, meaning Alabama lottery players would take their money out of state. He claims that at least $100 million could be raised by a state lottery, but an AUM professor says not to depend on a lottery as a cure-all.
It may temporarily bring in some additional funds to resolve some particular problems, but in the long run, it's no panacea.
A recent AUM poll shows that only a slim majority, 58% of Alabamians, are in favor of a state lottery. That means Alvin Holmes will need a powerful ally to get his bill through the legislature.
Any bill with any controversy, if AEA opposes it, it'll get defeated.
Holmes says he'll agree to change his bill to give half of the money from a lottery to education. He says if he can get his bill through the legislature this session, the lottery issue could go before voters this June. Andrew Findlay, WSFA TV News.
Thank you, Alexia.
Killing myself has gone through my head so many times. But that would be only if I wasn't on Medicaid. Now, if I can't find a doctor to take me because of whatever is going on now, that like I say, it's just a thought that goes through my head sometimes.
Presently, Linda receives an aid-dependent children check, and she is on Medicaid. She says she'd like to work, but any job she could get would not nearly cover the cost of delivery, and she says she would lose the Medicaid if she got even a low-paying job. She will soon have no place to live.
The family never was a family in the first place.
Yeah. And there's not a husband in the picture?
No. Boyfriend, no.
Okay. So,
just me.
At this point, Linda thinks she's around 4 months pregnant, but she's not sure. She has no doctor, and she says she's afraid she won't find one.
If I can't find one between now and the time I deliver, I believe I have to have it at home.
Does that scare you?
Yes. Very much. Because there would be nobody that I could think of that would be around me at the time that I do deliver. I'm thinking now I'm going to have to drive myself.
Let me quickly say...
For the first time, state education officials received a copy of the budget before it was presented to the legislature. State Superintendent Wayne Teague calls the document disturbing and severe. The proposed plan is $187 million less than this year's budget. Teague says although a significant portion of the cuts are from one-time 1985 appropriations, the funding decrease will still hurt.
The budget would cost us a total of 121 teacher units, 11 from the minimum program, and 110 from the one special allocation last year for the first grade down to 20 to 1.
Under the proposed plan, the State Education Department would lose 21% of its 1985-86 budget. The textbook fund would be reduced by 41%, a cut of $5.6 million. And the 1985 appropriation of $12 million for the replacement of worn-out buses would be cut out altogether. Teague is hopeful the education budget will be amended to at least its current level. He's planning a series of statewide meetings with parents to inform them of the needs of the department and, more importantly, the educational needs of their children.
We've gone just about as far in Alabama as we can go in making reforms and significant programmatic, administrative, instructional changes without the availability of additional revenue.
Dean Argo, WSFA TV News.
This is the first time that we've been able to...
As lawmakers began their first day of the regular session, one of the first bills introduced would offer a pay raise for state employees. Nearly half the House members have signed up to support it. But in his State of the State address last night, Governor Wallace said the only way he could foresee a pay raise would be through a lucrative offshore oil lease bid this spring. In a briefing this morning, Finance Director Henry Stegall said even that is a long shot.
He said if it was possible, he would like to do that.
But State Employee Association Director Paul Smith isn't convinced that tax collections next year are as dim as the administration projects.
They always say there's not going to be enough money to do this, that, and the other, and then end up with this, with tremendous surpluses. And we think that that's still a factor here, and that money will be available.
Although Wallace didn't say anything about a teacher's pay raise last night.
Yes, I think he would be opposed to it unless the money could be forthcoming.
We do believe out of a $2 billion budget that the $50 million or so necessary to provide a modest cost of living raise can be found, and we intend to find it.
Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Alabama State House.
So we intend to find it elsewhere.
Before we move on, that this is the first time that we've been able to
encourage your board members to participate in our academy.
On this morning, I think. Before
going statewide meetings will be drive-in of achievement for each thing they participate in that either
we in public education must be ready to step forward and present our case of accomplishments and our needs to the people. In my opinion, we've gone just about as far in Alabama as we can go in making reforms and significant programmatic, administrative, instructional changes without the availability of additional revenue. More of this kind of meeting has already been addressed also about your last evening, which I think was very
in the general fund budget. Then when you come to the special educational trust fund, my go in the basement of the church. From based on what I've been told, the lottery we have will be the only one in the nation where it is exclusively owned and controlled by the state of Alabama, and every nickel that are made will go toward the state.
They have been greater than the experts believe. There are a number
the legislation to do. We don't have enough funds in the state of Alabama.
States, and more than half the population today lives in states, those are the big states, where there are lotteries. The growth in lottery revenues in this country.
Over
Over the last few years, arch rivals Alabama and Auburn have hooked up in some extremely thrilling football games. But then again, the last few basketball confrontations between the two haven't been too shabby either. Alabama took a tight 60-55 decision in Auburn last January. Then in February of '85, the Tide and the Tigers battled through 2 overtimes in Tuscaloosa before the Tide prevailed 74-72. And then last March in the championship game of the SEC tournament, the two put on another heart-stopping performance. The Tigers taking a 53-49 overtime win. Tomorrow night, the two will go at it once again, this time in Tuscaloosa. All indications point to yet another close dogfight.
We know this year is not going to be any different. You know, it's going to go down to the wire and possibly an overtime game.
I think it's going to be one of those goes right to the end, and whoever gets a break here and there and who's playing tough defense without fouling out.
Much attention will be focused on the personal duel between senior forwards Chuck Person of Auburn and Buck Johnson of Alabama. But Auburn knows there's much more to Alabama than just Buck Johnson. And Buck Johnson knows there's more to Auburn than Chuck Person.
They got Chris Mars, they got Jeff Moore, they got Frank Ford, they got a whole host of other guys that come off and can score for them, can average 20 points for them if they needed it.
All in all, yet another great showdown between two great rivals. Mark Thornhill, WSFA TV Sports.
It's like to visit with sharks, barracudas, and 4,000 other kinds of fishes in the middle of the new $90 million attraction at Epcot Center. Gina, are you there somewhere?
I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, as you can see, I'm floating on a ledge. And this is the living seas, all the sharks, the barracudas, the turtles, everything is right here.
Gina, I understand that they had a most unusual grand opening for the Living Seas today.
Yes, it was very unusual and for Disney World, very appropriate.
On this 15th day of January 1986, we congratulate United Technologies Corporation and declare the Living Seas officially dedicated.
Unique and appropriate, a ribbon cutting underwater. It's what you might call a parting of the seas for Epcot, allowing man to see and in some cases feel what it's like in the ocean. Disney officials call it one of a kind and a daring concept, putting a 6 million gallon aquarium full of sharks, barracudas, dolphins, turtles, and more together in one attraction. What's even more daring is Disney allowing reporters a chance to see firsthand how it works, but not before a few lessons. Since the Living Seas is the first of its kind, the first of Florida and Disney turned out to welcome it.
Well, Gina, we've just had a look at what was going on today with the grand opening. What's it like being so close to the sharks and the rest of the fish down there?
It's a lot of fun, Bob. I'm a diver, but I tell you, I've never come this close to sharks before.
I understand also that they feed the sharks just before they let you into the tank tonight, so they would not be hungry.
I didn't understand. Yes, they promised me that they did feed the sharks.
Outstanding. Gina, thanks a lot for that live report from inside the Living Seas at the Epcot Center in Orlando, Florida. You take care of yourself and come out dry from down there now, okay? I think she was giving us a thumbs up there. Gina Gregory, somewhere in a tank of water.
On this 15th day of January 1986, we congratulate United Technologies Corporation and declare the Living Seas officially dedicated.
appropriate, a ribbon cutting underwater. It's what you might call a parting of the seas for Epcot, allowing man to see and in some cases feel what it's like in the ocean. Disney officials call it one of a kind and a daring concept, putting a 6 million gallon aquarium full of sharks, barracudas, dolphins, turtles, and more together in one attraction. What's even more daring is Disney allowing reporters a chance to see firsthand how it works, but not before a few lessons. Since the Living Seas is the first of its kind, the first of Florida and Disney turned out to welcome it.
We've just begun.
Around 100 tenants gathered at the community center only to find the doors locked. According to Montgomery City Councilman Mark Gilmore, this action is in stark contrast to that at other Montgomery housing projects where keys are made available to residents for community gatherings. Time for action.
Put on a list of what things need to be done. How many times have they passed out papers to these people, things that need to be done, and nothing never been done? They tell them, we're going to get the money, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. We don't see anything out here.
Gilmore said the meeting was meant to allow residents, young and old, to discuss current problems, but he says many will not speak out.
The average tenant speaks out, Fred, they're going to get thrown out, and they'll tell you that.
Gilmore also took us on a tour of a few apartments where we were shown cracks in the walls, doors that were poorly constructed, and some tenants complained of huge rat holes in their apartments. A housing authority official was in his office when we arrived, but left without comment. Chet Johnson, WSFA TV News.
We need to learn new life by learning again what it means to be missionaries. We bring the word of Christ taught again teaching at Catholic High School in Baton Rouge of what we call Algiers. But just as much as we can offer something to the type of people we have been serving, it's all very one-sided. We need to broaden that. We need more circle. I think set in ways, and we think we need to learn new life by learning again what it means to be missionaries, to bring the word of Christ to people who can enjoy and grow from it, and which is condition because of the type of.
Well, we just got to play our game and, just play aggressive defense and, offensive, get the offensive ball and just go out there and play our style.
Will not cover the many tags which we believe have been issued in as the law requires. The other is that broad that no official has any problems with. The good news is that we've found out that the 37 officials who were unable to lawfully file the sworn statement that they were law enforcement and undercover work by January 15th have already turned the tags back in. And that is, to us, that's good news. That just prevents us from having to... This is Lee Rolfe and Jerry Goodson and Russell Carter.
Okay, Scott, stop.
Initial tag, it will not cover the many tags which bearing the emblem S as the law requires. We've found out that the 37 officials who were unable to lawfully file the sworn statement that they were law enforcement and undercover work by January 15th have already turned the tags back in. And that is, to us, that's good news.
The judge's records indicate this is public safety.
On these 9, this is Lee Roth and Jerry Carter.
This plaque and look forward to coming back over here again, I hope, at the end of...
That it indicates that we have some dedicated state employees who believe in what they're doing and who really do all they can to serve the unemployed citizens of this state and the employers in finding jobs for those who need jobs and finding qualified people for those employers who are looking for individuals to hire in their organizations.
With us on this occasion is, on my immediate right, Mr. Tom Ventris, our Assistant Director of the...
And they intend to do what they set out to do, and that's to place people in jobs. I hope my association with this group continues, and I'll do everything I can.
Look over here again, I hope, at the end of, when we get our statistics together for the end of this past quarter.
Thank you very much, Lee.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Continue to we can top it by just continuing to do what our people are doing, and that's wait on the people as they come into the office, assess their qualifications, work with the employers in the state, and continue to try to find people jobs on a day-to-day basis.
It's indeed a real pleasure to be here representing
this occasion is, on my immediate right, Mr. Tom Ventris, our Assistant Director of the...
And they intend to do what they set out to do, and that's to place people in jobs.
The largest chemical waste dump that the world...
I think they're going to look very strongly at some alternatives to incarceration, because the entire question of corrections has become so expensive. Do you incarcerate, or do you look for other programs that will cost less money for the public?
Beach, Missouri. What we're talking about is bringing those Times Beach down to Alabama. It takes 10,000 years for any of those chemicals to seep down through that clay and get in our water system. And instead of,
Donna Watkins' 74-year-old father thought he was helping when he sold the room full of tools valued at $1,500 for $150. The tools were to be sold as part of an estate sale to help pay the medical bills for Donna's mother, who died Christmas Eve. But the day before the sale, a man came to the door offering to buy the tools for $150. Donna says it was not a misunderstanding, as there were price tags on the items.
I don't see how it could have been, with everything well marked. I mean, tags were on everything, and, you know, there were new items. I mean, it was obvious, you know, and I think what really caused us to believe it was deceptive is that he ran him to the bank right away.
Of course, they would be an easy victim for someone coming to the door and introducing themselves as something they're not, and conning them out of things, or being very skillful in how they approach them so that they could become very close to this person in a very short period of time.
Donna's father is suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Donna now knows she cannot leave him alone, and she only hopes this experience will help other families protect Alzheimer's victims.
You know, they just come in and out of reality, and it's kind of like having a child, you know, the same way you protect a 3 or a 4-year-old. You just have to look at them that way.
Carrie Gordon, WSFA TV News.
Two bills deal with complete immunity for all unattached patients who walk into any emergency room. Now, unattached patient is the key phrase.
An unattached patient is one the physician knows nothing about. In the Montgomery obstetrical care problem, it's a woman walking in ready to have a baby.
He knows nothing about her, any physical idiosyncrasies. He doesn't know what her blood pressure is. He doesn't know if she's diabetic. He doesn't know anything other than she's having a baby and he's got to help. That person is the absolute most dangerous person as far as the possibility of having a bad baby is concerned. That person is a real threat to the physician, because that person immediately presents him with the possibility of a civil suit for hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars that could completely wipe him out. He's afraid of that person.
One of Dixon's potential bills gives the doctor who delivers that woman's baby or who performs other emergency room duties complete immunity. Another bill gives him immunity from everything but gross negligence.
And then I have legislation that deals with the same situation, but only for obstetrical patients. I don't know which one I'm going to put in yet, because I have to meet with the Legislative Reference Service's constitutional experts so we can make sure we put the right bill in.
Hi ladies, how are you today? Be an gunshot wound or a stabbing or something, whether you're a thoracic surgeon.
Joe Morgan and Larry Gardner, Crum Foshee and Jimmy Hawley. Of Enterprise, Alabama, is going to employ 300 people, and Mr. Hyman, who is the president of Pride. Yes, sir, good to see you here, and we have Mr. Don Donaldson as the mayor. Mayor, Don, good to see you again. Yes, sir, Jimmy. Yes, sir.
If y'all will look at this.
Development block grants assist you in your efforts to improve the housing stock in Napier Field. I can remember back in Napier Field, you have a local man, I believe, who is a plant manager.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir, Jimmy. Yes, sir.
If y'all will look at
Any place in Alabama, but you're in a very fine location located in the Enterprise and Coffee County. So we do appreciate your interest in...
The doctors aren't the only ones who have to buy liability insurance. Employers buy the insurance to protect themselves from anyone, workers included, who are injured on their property. Because courts have awarded some stiff financial penalties in recent years, that insurance is getting more expensive. One example is the state of Alabama itself, which can't find affordable liability insurance.
This matter has probably grown so fast, the problems, that we've never had a situation where it is just gone from a non-problem to a major, major problem, that it almost demands some attention.
The package of bills you follow Representative Jimmy Clark is sponsoring would make it easier for judges to throw out cases that don't have substantial evidence, limits the financial penalties, and tightens the rules on where cases can be heard. The Wallace administration is backing these changes, which means there probably won't be much trouble getting the bills through the House of Representatives. But lines between business, which support the changes, and trial lawyers and labor, which don't want the limitations, are more clearly drawn in the Senate.
It's still premature to be making a judgment on the nature of the talks or the progress or whatever.
The administration and business interest realize this is a controversial issue, but they say they hope they can overcome the lawmakers' habit of shying away from hot issues during an election year. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Alabama State House.
I don't understand the little pages.
he do it? Convince so many people from all walks of life to leave their homes for jobs making a mouse magic? Easy. At least that's what Wallace Sears says.
Wallace, what is it that makes Disney World and Epcot Center special for you?
I think one of the first times when we came down here and visited back in the 70s, you look at the detail that goes into things, the way that you can really be surrounded by wherever you are. Back then, of course, it was just the Magic Kingdom. But in Main Street, USA, you're actually walking down a street that could have been in the turn of the century. My favorite is Liberty Square. The buildings that they have and the replicas or representations of what they have there are so authentic, but on the other hand, then you have that huge oak standing right in the middle like it's always been there and has always been a part of what they had here at Walt Disney World, and I think that reality is part of what really attracted me to it and the way they get into the details.
Sears isn't the only member of his Alabama family drawn away from Dixie to Disney. His sister Pamela got her degree in horticulture business at the University of Alabama, and now she supervises the Disney Tree Farm.
I miss my family. I still have my parents live there and my in-laws, and but I really like it down here.
Pamela and Wallace are two of about a dozen Alabamians at Disney and two of 19,000 total that keep Disney World magic. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News in Disney World.
We're trying to build a structure that reflects the reality of power races. You'll see that there has been ADC or no one else has been able to.
We think that there are any number of blacks who have not been active in the political system. We think that a well-organized statewide organization, a second such organization, hopefully can be effective in helping to broaden the base of black political participation. He always concentrate on a whole slate of candidates, several of them that have been addressing social concerns and things of that sort. In Birmingham, there's
a long time. I mean, if you look at the vote, the way it's broken out in various races, you'll see that there has been ADC or no one else has been able to deliver 100% of the black vote. So we're just collecting people. And if you look across the state, as the mayor's pointed out, from the Tennessee line to the Gulf of Mexico, from the Georgia line to the Mississippi line, we've got black elected